Welcome to the High in Love with Megan podcast with me, your host, Megan Cooper, a trauma-informed therapist, life coach and disruptor of wellness norms based in Brighton, UK. This isn't another nice-to-have wellness podcast. Instead, this podcast seeks to redefine what it means to be well in today's world. Here, we challenge the status quo, seek to reunite wellness with social justice and improve accessibility, diversity and inclusivity within wellness and beyond. As a listener, you are not here to passively consume. Instead, you are an ambassador for real, embodied, societal and systemic change in the world. As your host, I stand for radical self-inquiry and being able to have those confronting but necessary conversations so that we can remember our collective humanity at this time. We're here for the revolution and you've got a front row seat. Hey family, this week we're doing something a little bit different. Instead of one full conversation, one guest, one deep dive into one particular topic, I have pulled together a central theme from my episodes so far this year, clipping together the responses to the final question that I always like to ask guests. What brings you hope at this time? So wherever you're listening from, out on a walk, in the car, doing your life admin, hiding from your inbox, folding laundry whilst also having an existential crisis, here is a hope collage for you. Because hey, with everything going on in the world right now, I feel like we really all bloody need it. There is a lot going on. Interpersonally, geopolitically, socially, globally, if you're paying attention and if you're someone who thinks and feels deeply, which I imagine all of my listeners are, then it can be all too easy for that cynicism, despair and emotional overload to overwhelm us. So this episode is a bit of an offering, a bit of a pause, a reminder that hope is still here and we are all in this together. Not in a fluffy, bypassy kind of way, but in the grounded, gritty, human kind of way. The kind of hope that lives in people, in community, in honesty, in courage, in small acts, in imagination and in resistance. In the fact that even now people are still trying to build something better. You'll be hearing from Zack Alexander, a spiritual guide and mentor who, like me, rejects New Age spirituality and promotes a spiritual framework rooted in groundedness, social change, and the culture and geopolitics of the here and now. You'll hear from Wedlock and Andrew Bernard, both working with teenagers and young adults in schools and educational settings, redefining conversations around masculinity and what it means to be a man in today's world. You'll hear from Viv Grant, founder of Integrity Coaching, former head teacher, executive coach, speaker and author, whose work supports school leaders with resilience, equity and more human leadership. Kaia Allen-Bevan, activist and founder of Youth the Gap, whose work centres the youth voice, justice and social change, particularly in the area of anti-racism. You'll hear from Mindset with Muhammad, a decolonial storyteller and miseducator whose work invites us to think more critically about the world that we're living in and the one that we want to create. And you'll hear from Leah Kim, storyteller and writer whose work explores identity, truth-telling and motherhood through a deeply human and intersectional lens, including her upcoming publication, Mum Unfiltered. I hope their varied responses, as well as some common themes and threads, can offer you some resonance, reassurance and inspiration. Not just their answers, but a gentle invitation into your own. As you listen, maybe ask yourself, what is bringing me hope right now? Because hope doesn't always arrive with a big grand revelation. It can be little things that go unnoticed or something that we have to actively engage with and do. So without any further ado, let's dive into this special episode, What Brings You Hope? I wanted to ask you one more question, which is just around hope, because I know that for many people, myself included, hope can feel a little bit like a roller coaster through the time in which we're living. And I'm curious how that experience is for you and how you continue to cultivate hope in your life in the times to which we're living.
Yeah, I mean, we've always come out of stuff like this. I mean, yes, today's day and age is quite different in a number of ways, but like the underlying like energy, I even hate using the word, but the underlying energy and paradigms we're existing in, it's will be okay. And people got to get rattled. I'm sorry, but like we're living in a system that is going to crater the earth off a cliff. And we are expressing this hyper capitalistic system that is not designed to be forever. Right. And so people have to unwire from that. People have to unwire from the ways that, we've been manipulated through media and propaganda throughout our entire lives, and see things for the way they are and come back to ourselves. And so, a lot of what our own specific quote unquote spiritual journey was about was the dissolution of false selves, and there was a dark night of the soul in that. And there was all this stuff. Right. And now the collective has to go through that, and so this is the void state, and people got to get rattled and see where we've been living in false, harmful systems. Even me, like the last 2 years, we had to learn that our president, our Nickelodeon, our music, we're all done by pedophiles. That's not a left versus right issue. That just is, and so that's a dissolution that people need to confront. Now, this is also about empowerment. And so, this is about coming in and not being the helpless victim anymore, and recognizing that we have the power to come together collectively and to create new systems and institutions and structures, right? That this notion that these people, this small group of people, has power over us is a lie in itself, and we are being called to step out of that lie, okay? And to work through our own powerlessness, all right? And how we avoid ourselves and avoid things. And from there, like, why can't we create the world that we're supposed to be in right now? All this stuff around manifestation. I create my dream life. Well, here you go, guys. Hi.
Yeah, it's a big project.
Do it here instead of a BMW, right? Do it here now. Okay. If you're such a master, like, let's put the Mercedes aside for a second. I think can't have the Mercedes, right? But maybe it doesn't need to be the number one priority, right? Let's take that manifestation energy, put it here. Why not? And so this has always been civilization. Societies always collectively evolve. They mature. They will devolve as a part of that maturity. It's not a linear thing. And so that's what we're in. And like I said, we all need to grow the fuck up. And that's what we're doing right now. So congratulations to us in the West.
Amazing. I love that. I love that framing of the dark night of the soul and the void. Yeah. Hopefully we can come out the other side in some kind of sense of good grace as a global community. Thank you so much, Zack. Was there anything else that you wanted to include today?
No, I'm happy that celebrity culture is dying.
That's nice, isn't it?
Yeah.
Do you feel like it is? I hope it is.
So that's another good thing. So I think we're moving in the correct direction. There's some hope, right?
Before we go on, I'd so appreciate you to hit follow or subscribe. If you're listening on Spotify, click those 3 little dots next to settings to rate the show. On Apple Podcasts, you can leave a review, or take a moment to explore how you can rate or review on the platform that you're listening or watching. This makes a difference. I truly believe we need to have more of these conversations to shake up the status quo. We'll beat the algorithm together with your clicks and shares. Now back to the episode. Yep. How do you and how can we keep hope continuously alive?
It's a great question. And I think for me, what I try and do is, I'm not always great at it, but I think it's really important. I was having a conversation recently with a group of young activists and young sort of change makers, holding space for them, who are sharing very similar sort of sentiments and realities to what you were talking about there. And I say, hope is crafted through how we model our own self-care in a systemic space that is designed to burn us out, exhaust us, and create the conditions in our exhaustion that we can't participate. Self-care in this context is massively important. And one of the things that I've recently been talking about a lot is you don't have to engage and consume everything to be actively involved. And the hope that comes from it is that, for me, I'm hopeful knowing that a rested me and a calibrated me, an intentional me, is much more useful to the conversations that we're having. Someone that is exhausting themselves, trying to get up to date with every single thing, process and watch awful videos, traumatic videos. There's a difference between being informed and being, continuously exposed to traumatic stimuli. And I think that's something we need to be really clear and intentional with. So my hope comes from the fact that, and this has taken me a while to do this, to be really honest, but how I look after myself and how I look after and model self-care to other generations, specifically the younger generations coming up that are watching people like myself in the space, watching the work that I do, what I do in terms of my output and the work I do is important, but also how I model self-care and how I model intention and how I model regulating my own nervous system and how I model that process is something that I rely on for hope, because the cyclical nature of respond, react, exhaust, detract is something that really exists in this space. I've gone through a few of these loops over the past 6 years myself, culturally and communally. And it really dawned on me that the way in which the systems that we speak to are able to last as long as they do is because they bank on our exhaustion and they bank on our disengagement and they bank on a fear of, I can't do it anymore, I tapped out. Yeah. So intentionally prioritize and rest. Gina Martin calls it vitamin R, like vitamin rest, and coming off it.
I love that.
The internet. And I think that's really cool. And I think that is massively important because this is a long-term movement and conversation. Right now, what we're seeing and the influx of what we're seeing and how fast it's coming at us feels like we have to react, which we do, but it's not always on us, the individual, to react. If we stay in that collective space and prioritize rest, prioritize engagement, intentional of how we do and what we respond to, that for me is where my hope comes from. I'm hopeful about building cultures where self is prioritized in the structural movements, where we're approaching this as rested and as calibrated as we can, as opposed to burned out and dysregulated. And the activists and the social commentators that I see, younger generations, are actively practicing this. And that gives me hope because they are seeing and acknowledging I don't want to say the mistakes, but they're seeing and acknowledging the patterns previous generations and amending and sort of calibrating. That for me is what gives me hope. But you have to prioritize yourself in that process.
I'm curious for you how you envisage us moving forward and how you maintain hope at this time.
I think when you look at surveys that say 1 in 5 boys think Andrew Tate's great, 4 in 5 boys think he's an arsehole. And when I'm speaking in schools, and I do, like I said, I speak to a lot of people. I spoke to, I think, 20,000 odd young people last year. And obviously I'm not speaking to them intimately. I'm not speaking to them one-to-one, but I sometimes do sessions with the likely lads and the likely lasses. They have a specially selected group of students. And underpinning quite a lot of those conversations that I have in some depth are that they feel it's unfair, that they feel they don't want to be targeted with this, that they feel they're navigating this as well. So when I explain things like the man box, I want them to understand that where they're feeling is not their fault necessarily. And those versions are those old-fashioned versions of masculinity, which incidentally, I went to a grammar school, and at sixth form, my parents told me I wasn't allowed to leave the boys' grammar school and go to the college with my friends. I spiraled for 2 years because my parents had dared say no to me. Got into going to football matches. I started involving myself with hooliganism. I started stealing clothes because I wanted to wear the right clothes to go to the football in the 80s. I also started fighting quite a lot. My dad was a former police officer. So you can imagine, I was spitting out all this anger, this aggression, venting, trying to be the hardest, the coolest, have the nicest clothes, all of the stuff that the man box told me I should be doing. I ended up with an E and a U at A level from the school that my parents moved to get me into. And I absolutely damaged myself in so many different ways because of what I thought was justifiable rage because I'd been told no. And when I understand that, when I tell them that, and when I show them this idea, I use a kind of visual metaphor quite a lot. So I'll get this kind of glass Tupperware and I'll say, got to be strong. You're not allowed to be weak. Can't show emotions except anger. Real men do not sleep with men. So a key part of the man box is homophobia and, not being a real man, providers, not caregivers. By the time all that stuff goes in and you're a late adult, most of the lids of that is clamped firmly shut. And you've never chosen this. You're in this glass box that you can see out of. You can't see it, but we're in there. And what we're looking for is male approbation. We're looking for male respect. That's why men peacock to one another. That's why we want the nice trainers. That's why we want the nice cars. That's why we want the platinum Amex card. That's why we want the golf club membership and the private number club. Nothing to do with us. We want other men to respect us. That's why I call it dominance-based masculinity, because I think that's truly what it is. And I think once I explain that, you kind of get a bit of blankness from the kids and they think, and they realize, I hope, that they have a choice. And I think that's one of the most powerful moments any of us has, when we realize the life we're living at the moment doesn't have to be like that forever. And I think that's the thing that gives me hope. When I see that, just that little spark of, oh, okay. So this guy's not blaming me for my behavior. He's showing me the ecosystem within which we all create, within which we all live, and within which we all develop, and that I could be different. And I think for me, that's why I think education is so vital. That's why I've dedicated the last 20 years to it. And it's why I'm writing books to help other people to hopefully have those empathy light bulbs that allow them themselves to be the person they can be, instead of following the rules that they never signed up to in the first place.
What brings you hope at this time?
Well, a few things bring me hope. When I interact with the children that I teach, unapologetically reject some of the division that is being thrown. They ask questions now, children. They don't just accept it, and I'm someone who, I'm in that classroom, but I am not there to raise employees. I'm not there to just, not churn out robots asking questions. And my children give me hope, my daughters, because
is it 3 daughters that you have?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, you got your work cut out for you.
Yeah, I know. They keep me busy, but resistance begins at home. And what gives me hope is when I see the young people. Yes, you do get those boys who are being intoxicated by the red pill alpha bro stuff, but in the main, young people utterly reject this language of division. They reject this language of hate. They reject this polarization that is happening en masse, because, and I don't know what age that changes, but be it primary school or secondary school children that I've interacted with, they tend to see people for who they are. In my experience, I mean, this is just me interacting with children and young people. I'm sure there's a science behind it somewhere, but talking to these young people and growing up, I don't remember my peers and I talking about the same issues. We had 9/11 happen, and I remember how divisive it was in our school. I think I was in year 11, and how people were just in their own little groups and enclaves but I'm not seeing that now. I'm seeing children who are a lot more aware of what is going on, and that gives me hope. That you see children who are just they're connected to social media, right? So of course there are loads of dangers to social media and loads of harmful things that can happen on these platforms, but they're aware of things. So when you've got a 7-year-old, 8-year-old questioning why Newsround are using prisoners for Palestinians and hostages for one, I can't help but feel hope. And this was again, you present the facts to the children, and they'll just tell you unfiltered, unapologetic perspective. Sir, why are these? Sir, why are they prisoners? And I actually made a video about this, and I complained to the BBC. It was actually
I saw that you done that.
Yeah. It was actually a 9-year-old girl who asked me, did they use prisoners before Palestinians because it was alliteration, because we were learning about figurative language, alliteration and metaphors, and I just started laughing. I thought, that's brilliant, absolutely brilliant, because Palestinian prisoners, PP. So that was incredible. So children do give me hope, and I think we have a responsibility to encourage and to cultivate that curiosity in them. That's why I think the education system is so hopeful that my employers are not watching this. It needs a massive overhaul, because children need to be able to be allowed to feel like they're restricted, but think. Schools need to be a safe space where children can think and to say what they want to say without having prevent knocking down the door. So children give me hope, but at the same time, as well as children give me hope, it's finding communities, like you mentioned, about having fortified enclaves of people that are doing incredible work, that are not just speaking up, but are on the front lines. You've got these wonderful elderly people, grandparents, people in wheelchairs who are sitting down with placards, and some of us are in our ivory towers there. And I just think, wow, humanity is not dead yet. You see people who are risking everything. You got these hunger strikers, who put themselves on the line in order for the right to the dignity. So in the midst of all the darkness, in the midst of all the hatred, there are people who are continuing to be shining examples of hope. And, I just hope that the more we can connect with each other, the more we can look past our little petty differences, the better it will be for us to sort of overcome what's coming. And I don't feel hopeful about anything other than, a reform government coming in the UK. I mean, Zack, you've got, whatever you're doing, Zack, do what you're doing and do more of it, because I think Zack, the Green Party, are the only alternative that we have in escaping this it's madness. But in the midst of all this despair, I think just connecting with people who are doing the good work out there, who are empowering people, who are rejecting the hate, reach out to those people, and which is hopefully what we're doing today, and which will hopefully reach people and galvanize people into want to do the same thing, and spread. And it sounds so cliche, spread positivity, but just reach out to people and connect with people.
What inspires hope for you within the arena of motherhood and in general?
I think it's like seeing people who are not mothers, like as far as like you're not raising children in your household, care so much about other people's children. Like, we care about the children in Gaza. We don't know them. We've never met them. But like, they like basically will, like, they're at the center of so much, right? Seeing the way, this was something that like kind of felt illogical, but like seeing the way my friends, my community have come to care about my kids over the last couple of years, just seeing the way that like people actually do care about the children, like seeing how many times a James Baldwin quote was shared over and over again. If that was like a spell, that was just, I didn't know that quote before. I had never read James Baldwin. I've never, my like piles of books now are all these amazing like Black authors and revolutionary thinkers who like my school never presented for obvious reasons, you know?
Definitely wasn't taught in the British Empire curriculum.
So I'm like, as my world has really opened up, I'm like, what's wrong with me that I'd never read James Baldwin? And then I came to understand like, oh, wait, it's all by design that you're kept from. Like, we were only taught Martin Luther King Jr. and like the peaceful version of him, period. That's it, right? That's like all we really knew. A little bit of Malcolm X-ish, but like not really. But going back to his quote, it just was like, wait, actually, we all, there's so many of us that are aligned in this central value of all the children are ours. And so as the parents, we cannot do it all the time, right? Like it is really hard. For like, I feel my brain is still like, it shouldn't be that hard. Like, it's like taking the kids to school in the morning, getting them up. It really shouldn't be that hard, but it is. Like, it's exhausting afterwards. And so we need support, even if it's just like moral support, even if it's just like recognition. The number of times my friends have been like, how are you a full mom and also doing blah, 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 blah. And just getting that, it's like, oh, it fills my cup, right? And also being kind of floored that they even see that. Because I'm like, oh, I thought you needed to be because I never saw other mothers. That's the problem. Is like I didn't recognize that. I didn't know what that effort was. But we're in such a different moment in time where so many of us care about children we'll never meet and that we'll never birth with our bodies. I think like that gives me hope. And then also just knowing how differently I feel today than I did 5 years ago, let alone 10, 11 years ago, and felt like I really felt hopeless at a certain point. I was like, I just couldn't see a way out just to be so clear about what matters to me now and to have witnessed my own strength in coming through it. Not that it was like pretty or perfect remotely, but like progress was always made. It's all like pieces of the story of healing, right?
It's an image that I often share when I'm speaking with school leaders, and the phrase isn't mine, but it comes from a social activist in the States called Parker Palmer, and he talks about standing in the tragic gap. And so really it builds upon what Kaia is saying, and I really, really just feel this for educators today, that, there's on the one aspect, which Kaia has spoken about, I like to believe that those of us in education, we have a hope. We have a hope for a better world, and we have a hope that things are going to get better. But on the other hand, we have the reality of the world that we live in right now. And there can be that pull sometimes to get caught up in that cynicism. And I think for us as educators, we stand in that tragic gap where there are no certainties. We have to hold on to that hope, but at the same time mitigate any cynicism that's coming from other quarters. But again, I think for me, the thing would really have to be the prevailing feeling would have to be one of hope. Because I couldn't be in education all these years if I didn't have a sense of hope that things would get better.
I feel like probably all of us are having that feeling of walking in the dark, of looking at
everything that's going on, all the injustices, and thinking, where are we going collectively? What's my role in this? And I think looking and thinking, what is happening in this world and how can this persist, right? And I think learning to walk in the dark, and I think for me in this is seeing the amount of darkness that they want us to see, and not in a way that is to kind of positively gaslight ourselves and think, oh, don't worry, we'll just see love and light. No, okay, let's see what we're dealing with here. Let's see the darkness that there is in the world. And within the uncertainty of it all, position ourselves in as an individual that is capable to promote change. And I think for me is constantly evaluating, constantly understanding with the resources we're in place, especially in a time where it feels unsafe, thinking about where is my position in this, making sure that I'm still making changes, making sure that I can still be, a change with also the people I'm around and be in community. So I think in a time that feels uncertain and very much in the dark, I refuse to sit and be uncomfortable, but also feel demotivated or to feel like giving up, because I know that's exactly how they want us to feel. But wanting to make sure that I still hold on to that hope. I practice that radical hope and that radical empathy to always understand, even if it isn't my lived experience. So I guess walking in the dark for me right now is making sure that in this time that feels daunting, that I still know there is light and we all are holding light within each other. So putting that close together as much as possible to maximize that light in that world that does feel dark.
Thank you for listening. It's great to have you with me on this journey towards higher love for all. Our time is our greatest commodity and gift, so thanks for investing it in yourself and sharing it with me. Please do take a moment to rate and review the show, all of which enables more people to find me and for me to connect with more great guests each week for both yours and my enjoyment. All links, references and contact information is detailed too within the show notes. And I always love to hear your feedback, so feel free to hit me up on my Instagram at higherlove_with_Megan or via my website higher-love.com. Send your takeaways, and if you enjoyed this episode, please share or send on to someone else who would benefit. Until next time, big love.